Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, Alaska's pipeline to the future, delivering oil today, sustaining operations for tomorrow, committed to safety, operating the 800-mile Trans-Alaska Pipeline since 1977.
The National Weather Service.
And good Monday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on this final day of March 2014. It goes pretty quick, doesn't it? Here's a look at what we're talking about tonight. We expect that high pressure is still in control, that you'll have a pretty clear sky if you're over the mainland. If you're in the corners of Alaska, chances are you're going to deal with more clouds. But it looks like overall the ridge of high pressure is starting to break down just a little bit. So maybe by mid to late week, we'll have a little bit of a different weather story for you. In the meantime, you can always check your weather story at weather.gov/Alaska or www.arh.noaa.gov. You can give us a call on the weather info line at 800-472-0391. Find each weather service office in Alaska and around the nation on Twitter, twitter.com/NWS, and in our case, Anchorage or NWS Juneau or NWS Fairbanks. For Facebook, U.S. National Weather Service Alaska, and on YouTube. You can find this broadcast by searching AKWX TV, short for Alaska Weather TV, or go to alaskapublic.org and look on the right side of your screen, scroll down just a little bit, and you'll get the latest broadcast of Alaska weather. Looking out to the Bering Sea, you can see one giant storm. It's fairly compact right around the central Aleutians, and yesterday we were talking about storm warnings in many cases and pretty strong gales. A lot of those have diminished now, but you can see the clouds spinning out and away from that storm center and creating a pretty substantial occlusion. Now, the leading edge of that frontal boundary is going to fall apart as that occlusion weakens and the difference in the air temperatures kind of lessens somewhat. We've got another wave back behind it and a third wave even further out to sea. Now, as you look at that spinning situation there, you can see there's a lot of dry air across the southern Bering Sea and a lot of milder air shifting northward ever so slightly. Look at that one more time. You can see another storm's coming in from the south and west, but high pressure sitting across Alaska, especially across northern Alaska, is really holding back the progression of each one of these storms from marching into the Gulf. Now, if that were to wane away, say in the coming 3, 4, 5 days, then some of these storms might be able to generate a little bit more activity in the Gulf and then weaken the overall ridge pattern. We'll see if that can happen. Here's a look at the rest of Alaska. We've had some fair weather clouds across southern parts of southeast, but that did not impact the temperatures at all today. In fact, many areas in southern parts of southeast soared into the 50s. A beautiful day it looked like on the temperature map. You'll see that in a moment. High pressure still sitting across northern Alaska, and there have been some weaker areas of low pressure trying to get in on that act, but nothing really substantial yet. So you see a lot of low clouds are locked in there, and some colder temperatures, of course, as well. Some cumulus clouds developing across eastern parts of the Copper River Basin and north of the Gulf. Might be some spot snow or rain showers underneath that, but it didn't look like anything too terribly heavy. And then out to the west again, you can see our storm center around Adak as that continues to work its way eastward. The core of that storm is being a little bit sheared off with high pressure holding that back. So you've got a lot of high clouds overrunning that very dry air down below. And the end result is this isn't going to be much to write home about it at all. With high pressure sitting across the northern Gulf at 1,023 millibars, that's firmly in control of southern Alaska, with northern Alaska being taken care of the 1033 high. Across southeast, a very mild and dry day, not a whole lot of wind it looked like, with temperatures once again in the 40s and 50s. Low pressure stretches from just south of Adak and Atgat 975 to 982 millibars on the western side of the storm. And once again, this area of the frontal boundary likely going to fall apart here in the next 24 hours, and probably a little bit more of a focus here around the triple point where the warm air, the cold air, and the occlusion all come together. Looking ahead toward tonight, you'll notice that frontal boundary is stretching out a little bit more, but off the map here is that triple point, the area again where that colder and warmer air all meet up together, and it's coming up under that high pressure ridge. We've got a little bit of a surge of cooler air trying to drop southward. It runs into the eastern parts of the Alaska range, and it won't get any further after this point. Out to the west, another wave of moisture trying to work up toward the Aleutians. It's running into the first wave of moisture here, wrapping into that low pressure system, so kind of a complicated system there. We'll see some fair weather clouds across southeastern Alaska, probably some spot snow showers across the Yukon. All in all, though, a very dry weather pattern for the majority of the 49th state on the Seward's Day, and across the Alaska Peninsula and off and on across the Aleutian chain. You'll likely run into some rain and snow showers, some of that for the Pribilofs as well. As we head into Tuesday, that frontal boundary across the eastern interior and across southeast just won't make it over the Alaska Range or the Wrangell-St. Elias area at all. Low pressure across the eastern chain is trying to work some of that warmer or milder air northward toward Kodiak Island. At this point, it doesn't look like that precipitation will make it into Kodiak, probably hanging just south out over the open water. There's still plenty of dry air to chew away at any precipitation working its way northward, and that's why we see our frontal boundary falling apart here across the Bering as well. The dry air simply erodes that leading edge of any weather change. Now across the central and western Aleutians, that next wave is creeping up across some areas of land there. Spotty areas of rain and snow showers are possible. Meanwhile, low pressure is trying to dislodge high pressure across the Arctic coast. Watch for a little bit of a wind shift there as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday, but again, nothing too substantial. By Wednesday, low pressure now has worked its way into the eastern Gulf waters and coastal areas of southeast. 994 millibars. It's not a terribly strong storm, but it does look like it will slosh up some rain into central and southern parts of southeast, and areas a little bit further north might experience a trace amount of rain or snow mixed in. A little bit farther south and west toward the Alaska Peninsula, scattered areas of rain and snow showers are possible along the trough. Again, most areas on land will be dry. It will mainly be confined to areas over open water. And low pressure across the North Pacific, stretching out toward the west, is still disorganized but capable of producing some scattered rain and snow there across the central and western chain. The coldest areas out to the west, the driest areas over land, and most areas, again, will be dry at least through midweek. But if this looks a little bit different as far as the weather patterns of late go, you'd be right. This looks like something that's trying to change toward the end of the week to perhaps maybe a more active pattern. Here's a look at the temperatures, and once again, southern southeast wins the day. If you're looking for warmth anyway, anywhere from Hyder out toward Heidelberg saw temperatures in the low to mid-50s, including Ketchikan and Annette. From Sitka to Petersburg, northward to Juneau, Haines and Skagway, all in the lower 40s today. Yakutat, 40 degrees. Areas around Prince William Sound were in the 30s and 40s as well. The Kenai Peninsula and Kodiak Island enjoyed temperatures at or above 40 degrees this afternoon. Anchorage was 38. It looked like Valdez was 36, Talkeetna near 39, even around the middle Tanana Valley. Fairbanks today made it above freezing to 36. Northway and Eagle, low to mid-30s there. It looked like Tok and Northway, though, were struggling just a little bit in the late afternoon. You did have a few more clouds, so you didn't get as much of that sunshine as many further south did today. A little bit further north still, temperatures didn't quite make it to freezing around Fort Yukon or Arctic Village, but your day is coming soon. 19 around Arctic Village this afternoon, Anaktuvuk Pass, 14, Ambler and Bettles. Teens and 20s for you. The Arctic coast, sub-zero, still around Barrow, 6 below, 2 above in Kaktovik, Point Hope and Point Lay, and Wainwright still struggling to see some of that warmth that your neighbors to the south were enjoying. Low to mid-teens around Kotzebue Sound. Shishmaref was 16, 20 in Nome. Unalakleet, 18 degrees. Grayling was 27. McGrath, 33. Bethel showing mid-20s this afternoon, with Hooper Bay around 18. St. Lawrence Island in the lower 20s. Just above freezing for St. Paul and St. George, both experiencing rain and snow, but it was St. George at the last observation I saw. It was still reporting snow with rain and snow there for St. Paul. 30s and 40s for the Alaska Peninsula. Like Pilot Point was enjoying a milder day today. 30s and 40s for Bristol Bay. 43 in Unalaska Dutch Harbor, and 30s for the west and west central parts of the Aleutians. Overnight low temperatures will go below freezing for just about all areas on land. You can see from the Kenai Peninsula northward, temperatures are still freezing up at night, which means any thawing we're seeing is just going to create a slick mess in the morning. So be careful again, no matter where you are in Alaska. 5 to 15 below for the Arctic coast, the Seward Peninsula at 5 to about 15 above. Southwestern Alaska in the teens and 20s. King Salmon looking at 24 with Kodiak at 31. Overnight lows for the Alaska Peninsula, mainly above freezing, with the chain anywhere from the mid to upper 30s. Southeast looking at 20s and 30s tomorrow morning, and by the afternoon back in the lower to mid 40s. Granted, there will probably be some areas that are a little bit closer to 50 after the heat we've seen today. The 30s and 40s for South Central, mid-30s for the interior, and teens and 20s for the Brooks Range. The Arctic coast still looking at single-digit temps. Nome about 25. Southwest Alaska, including the coastal areas in the upper 20s to mid-30s. McGrath about 34. Bethel 29. and the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians near 40 or above, 43 in Kodiak. Flying weather tomorrow, visibility still looks great across most of the 49th, with IFR conditions expected across the Arctic coast, mainly east of Barrow and north of Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse, but west of Kaktovik. You'll catch some IFR conditions across the western Bering and along the Aleutians and points south, and also north of the Wrangell St. Elias and east of Glen Allen. Here's a look at the pass conditions, though. As you just saw, Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass are expected to be in severe clear mode again, with high pressure and dry air still in charge. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass and Rainy Pass should be fine. Windy Pass expected to be VFR. Same goes for Isabel Pass, and smooth sailing and clear sailing through Tanita. Looks like Portage Pass should be VFR. Now, one thing to keep in mind, though, Chilkoot and White Pass will be VFR. Areas just to the north of that may experience poor visibility. Now, freezing levels, you'll notice this surface freezing line still hugging the Gulf Coast and splitting the difference between St. Matthew and the Pribilofs, with some elevated warmth coming in around 2,000 to 4,000 feet. Also got a little bit of warmth sneaking into the Bering Sea over the Alaska Peninsula. And the next storm is also trying to push in some milder air aloft coming in from the North Pacific. Now, about icing potential, there doesn't seem to be a very great threat. Not too many reports today across southeast, south central, or the interior. There will be some scattered areas of light, perhaps isolated moderate, closer to the frontal boundaries themselves, mainly across the North Pacific and south of Kodiak Island into the central Gulf. Again, that should be light to isolated moderate. And out across the west, those levels below 10,000 but above 3,000 feet. The jet stream still shows our ridge of high pressure is firmly in control, but there are some signs that this is starting to change up a little bit. We've got our powerful jet stream here, the main storm track, still well south of Alaska and cutting into the Pacific Northwest. The jet for the last week or so has been a little bit more to the east, but now as it moves westward, the storms that are coming in from the North Pacific are able to get up under that ridge. And if that continues, perhaps we'll see some changes by mid to late week. We currently have a trough of low pressure across the Northwest Territories and the Yukon, so that is creating a little bit more of an opportunity for some storms out to the west to latch on to perhaps more energy across the North Pacific. At 9,000 feet, you have high pressure across the northern Yukon. We've got the ridge still sitting on the eastern side of Siberia, right to the west of the Bering Strait. Low pressure north of the eastern Aleutians has some faster moving winds again. This would be right under that main jet stream. South of the Aleutians, you can see those wind speeds up to 50, maybe even 55 knots. Stronger southwesterly flow coming in on the north side of the ridge there, feeding in a few more clouds and certainly some heat to southern parts of southeast. You look at 3,000 feet, the wind speeds just fall off across the Wrangell St. Elias. Easterly winds coming across Prince William Sound and south central only at 5 knots, with high pressure trying to push in some colder air here. 15 to 20 knot winds, offshore flow from 20 to 40 knots, speeding up as it heads out over St. Matthew, and several waves of low pressure here, likely creating a little bit of turbulence on an isolated fashion. The wind speeds, though, not too terrible. The strongest winds are south of the chain. And again, no area in Alaska seems to have very fast winds at this point at 9 or even 3,000 feet. So looking at turbulence then, below 4,000 feet across the central and northern parts of the Bering, mainly over St. Lawrence, Nunivak Island, and St. Matthew Island. Below 4,000, light to isolated moderate is possible. The worst of it will be well to the west. Along a frontal boundary south of the Aleutians, below 4,000 feet, you could run into some occasional widespread moderate. And then south of Kodiak Island to about Chignik, and then along that frontal boundary again, you could run into some changing wind directions there and some shear, generally again below 6,000 feet. A little bit of chop there from Glen Allen eastward into Canada, and the Wrangell St. Elias area northward could present some light to isolated moderate. That's a look at your turbulence and your aviation forecast. In just a few minutes, we'll be back with a look at your marine weather. Stay tuned.
Good evening, I'm Harry Keeling. On behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to Hangar Flying. Our guest this evening is Chris Shaver. Chris is an air safety investigator for the National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, and Chris is assigned to the Anchorage office. Chris, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Harry.
Chris has extensive experience in the aviation world, having received an aviation degree from Indiana State University. Spent some time as a CFI and then a corporate pilot. Received his master's working with a program as an intern with NTSB. Chris came to Alaska in 2011. A lot of time in a lot of aircraft, including Falcons, Gulfstreams, Super Cubs, Navajo. Chris, you're involved in a project that caught my eye, and I really appreciate you being here talking about it. You produced, I think, what was the second of 5 of aviation safety videos, and we had Kathy Gagne on a couple of months ago to talk about what she did. Yours, I believe, was on stall spin awareness, low altitude problems with aerodynamic stalls, and I think you showed it at the November safety meeting, the safety seminar?
Yep.
And it was very well received. I heard a lot of comments about how good that was. But you talk about the project, would you?
Yeah, most people know the NTSB from, recommendations. Everybody looks, the NTSB has recommended this or that, to the FAA or to manufacturers. And really, though, safety alerts has been one of the tools that our investigators have had for a long time to get out things that they feel have an impact on aviation safety, but they don't necessarily warrant some type of actual recommendation to someone to do something. They hadn't been used all that much, though. So, a little over a year ago, we came up with the idea of actually putting these 5 safety alerts together along with their associated videos. And then we actually went and we did for really a first time, we did a full NTSB board meeting that presented all of the safety alerts, and the board members got on board, and we put it on the public face of the NTSB, and it turned out really well.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, tune in next time, because we're actually going to show that video in its entirety. But in the time remaining tonight, I want to ask Chris a couple of questions about the project and of course, the concern behind the project. Talk a little bit about stall spin awareness. Is that clearly the thing to avoid is avoid the situation in the first place, but what about upset recovery training, emergency maneuver training?
Yeah, it's one of the things that we've pushed as an agency, and I personally, I've gone from one end to the other. For a while I was kind of against spin training, where we took it away from having to have it on the private pilot side. But as I've gotten a little more into it, I'm actually hoping to go do some upset recovery training here in the next couple months. There are some great companies. I don't think there are any more here in Alaska that do it, but there are plenty of places down in the lower 48 that use really good equipment, have great instructors, and really can put you through the entire gamut of all the stuff that you can encounter and show you the correct way to recover.
Well, I will tell you, Chris, that a couple of years ago I went to emergency maneuver training down at Chandler, Arizona. Mm-hmm. Fighter International, I think, is one of their names, but flew the Extra 300. And years and years and years ago, when I started my Air Force pilot training, I did spins, and I didn't like them at all. But I'll tell you what, by the time I finished this course, not a problem. We did every kind of spin you could think about: upside down, inverted, accelerated, and what I walked away from that with was a recovery procedure, a rote procedure that I can recite still many years later. It's great training.
Yeah.
And we got probably a minute left. I just want to ask you a real quick question. Other than stall spin awareness, what one thing would you recommend to our pilots that might help fly safer in Alaska?
Yeah, it goes along the same line of training. Go out with a flight instructor on every flight. Make it a personal responsibility to simulate an engine failure. Do the things that will get that rote memory, embedded. So when something really does happen, and you have all the pressure involved, that rote memory comes out and you can do, and so you don't have to rely just on your instinct.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on the program tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, next time, please tune in and we will show you the video that Chris made. I think you will be very impressed and you'll learn a lot, so tune in. Also, I want to remind you that the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation is member supported, and we need you to help us, and you can help us by renewing your 2014 membership. You can go on to our website, www.aasfonline.org. If you're not a member, It's $35 a year, and you can help us bring you programs like this, seminars like we had in November, and we got one coming up in April. So please help us out, and until next time, fly safe.
Time now for an update on today's sea ice edge, and if you're ready for the ice to go away, this will be good news. It is receding. It's melting. You'll notice that it's still well away from St. Paul and St. George. There's some areas of open water and areas that are opening up even still today around the Kuskokwim Bay area into Bristol Bay, and around Cook Inlet. The sea ice concentration here north of Kenai is pretty low and again thinning out as we go through the day. If you'd like to analyze this and see the sea ice program's analysis of where things are going over the next 3 to 5 days, you can easily do that by going to weather.gov, or you want to use the complicated address here, pafc.arh.noaa.gov/ice or weather.gov/Anchorage. That's easier. .php at the end. You can get links to high-res imagery for the day around different parts of Alaska that our Alaska Sea Ice program deems very interesting and useful to you. You can get the analysis here and the tools you need to make a map similar to this. We use Google Earth. And again, the shape files are there for you. So it's all there all the time. This next sea ice edge analysis will be done on Wednesday and then again on Friday. So check in for that anytime you like. Here's a look at the wind forecast for southeastern Alaska. Tomorrow, variable winds across the Lynn Canal. High pressure across the north and southern parts of the inner waterways should promote another glorious day temperature-wise. 40s and 50s expected in many cases there. Variable wind light, only 5 miles an hour, if that. 2-foot seas in the north, and about the same as you head further south. The winds may pick up a little bit more from 5 to 10 knots. Coastal areas looking at more of a southeasterly flow around Icy Cape and Cape Fairweather. More of an onshore flow from the northern entrance all the way down to the Dixon entrance. 15 knots with a 6-foot sea in the south. Getting into Wednesday, northerlies across the Lynn Canal picking up a little bit more, up to 20 knots now, and you can see changes happening for the central and southern areas too, up to 20 knots with a 4-foot sea there. Coastal waters looking at more of an offshore flow now from 10 to 20 knots, 7-foot seas in the south, 6-foot seas in the north down toward Gustavus. You're looking at more of a 15-knot wind coming in from the east to west. Across south central, we're also expecting fairly light and variable winds inside and outside of Prince William Sound, down across Seward and into Resurrection Bay. An easterly flow coming into the Barren Islands, more of a drainage wind still creeping down the Cook Inlet, only at 10 to 15 knots, 20-knot winds inside Chillicothe Strait and on the eastern side of Kodiak Island. From the southeast, you're looking at an 8-foot sea. On Wednesday, variable winds continue just south of Kenai. It might have a little bit more of a northeasterly flow, otherwise variable and light. 15 knots with a northeasterly flow. East of the Barren Islands, west, the winds become lighter and more variable, a 2-foot sea there. 4-foot seas inside Chillicothe Strait, 8-foot seas east of Kodiak, and you're looking at 5 to 6-foot seas in the north and western parts of the Gulf. Across the Alaska Peninsula, an east and southeasterly wind on the Bering Sea side, more of a south and southeasterly wind for the Pacific side at 25 knots, 4-foot seas around Castle Cape and out towards Chignik, but the further south you go, the winds dramatically pick up, and so do the seas, thanks to the storm system creeping in from the south and west there. So 16-foot seas there south of Sandpoint and King Cove on Tuesday. That diminishes as we get into Wednesday with more of a uniform southeasterly wind coming in from the Pacific, an east and southeasterly flow on the Bering Sea side with 3 to 6-foot seas and winds to 20, even 25 knots there as we head into the midweek. For the Aleutians, a west and southwesterly flow coming across the central and eastern chain. The strongest winds and highest seas will be on the Pacific side from 21 to 22 feet from Unalaska all the way out toward Adak, again on the south side. Southerlies around Kiska with 15-knot winds at 11-foot seas, and easterlies around the western part of the chain, a 9-foot sea with 20-knot winds. Watch what happens on Wednesday. We get the more of a uniform southerly flow all the way from Kiska to Unalaska and Nikolsky. 20 to 25 knots will do the trick. 6 to 8-foot seas on the Bering side and 12 to 17-foot seas with the highest there south of Nikolsky and Unalaska. A northeasterly flow on the west side of the next low-pressure system, 20 knots with a 15-foot sea out around Attu and Shemya. Across the west coast, a northeasterly flow coming across St. Lawrence Island and out of Norton Sound. Easterlies from Hooper Bay all the way out toward the St. Matthew Island waters, Kuskokwim Bay and the Pribilofs looking at 25 to 30-knot winds. And you'll notice the St. Matthew Island seas are back there on the map now. 7-foot seas are expected there. Same goes for Kuskokwim Bay and 9-foot seas around the Pribilofs. By Wednesday, an east and southeasterly flow will be predominant still, 20 to 30-knot winds with 5-foot seas around St. Matthew and the Kuskokwim Bay area, 6-foot seas around the Pribilofs with winds from the south and east. Across the Arctic coast, winds remain pretty light around the Beaufort and the Chukchi Sea. We've got more of a northerly flow from Cape Lisburne all the way into Kotzebue Sound at 15 knots, and westerlies just north of Barrow only at 10 knots. By Wednesday, the winds still remain fairly light. One exception would be just north of Kaktovik, with easterlies up to 20 knots now by Wednesday, and northeasterlies are blowing down the Chukchi Sea coast at 10 to 15 knots. Recapping tonight's weather, things are pretty quiet across the interior despite a cold front trying to work into the eastern Alaska range. Now, a little bit further east, there could be some scattered snow showers there. Chances are most areas will only see a few fair weather clouds around the Copper River Basin, Tok and Northway, and that's about where it stops. High pressure is in charge of the eastern Gulf. You have another nice day in store for you across southeast tomorrow. Low pressure is working through the chain, bringing a front into the Alaska Peninsula and allowing another one to come in behind it. You can see that sneaking in from the west there. There will be a few areas of low clouds and flurries across the Bering, but that's mostly south of the ice edge. North of that, things are very, very dry. As we get into tomorrow, the frontal boundary across the east really isn't much to talk about at all. Low pressure will keep any chance of moisture well to the east. The frontal boundary works up toward Kodiak Island, but any moisture along that has been drying already, and because of that, the chance of precipitation is probably very low. The best chance of any precipitation likely around the Alaska Peninsula out toward the eastern chain. You'll look for another opportunity of rain and snow showers mainly south of the chain out across the central and western Aleutians there, and along that frontal boundary the interior looks pretty clear. We'll see a few more clouds working in from the south and west across Bristol Bay up toward Amonuk. Across south central, a few more clouds into the northern Gulf, and southeast is due for some rain. And by Wednesday afternoon, that looks to be possible across some areas from Sitka all the way down toward Heidelberg and Hyder, up toward Petersburg, and probably a chance for some rain and snow showers as far north as Juneau and Haines. Out to the west, a new storm is working into the North Pacific. We'll see what it offers for us by the end of the week. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather. We'll see you again tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.